Alright, guys, so we're hopping into Romero territory. I'm doing the whole trilogy of his original zombie trilogy, starting with Night of the Living Dead from 1968. And I was saying in my video for Lucio Fulci's Zombie how in that movie they're more like the voodoo-ish zombies that we got before Night of the Living Dead. Because Romero basically created the modern zombie. Like everything that we see in Night of the Living Dead here and then Dawn of the Dead, like before this film, it was all the zombies that we saw were like either voodoo spells that were bringing the dead back to life or like science gone wrong and stuff like that. He pretty much invented the modern zombie here, like with the whole shoot him in the brain and stuff. That's what kills him. And that if you get bit by one, then you'll turn into one. And the way that they walk and everything. So I mean, Romero was immensely influential on the horror genre and on that whole subgenre of reanimated corpses. That he pretty much reinvented the zombie as we know it. Now, I was surprised with the poll that I put on on the community tab for what's people's favorite out of these three films. And Dawn won by a decent amount. But it was only Night and Dawn that were voted for. No one voted for Day of the Dead, which is surprising because it is my favorite out of these three movies. Then Dawn of the Dead, and then Night. And this is kind of, I guess, blasphemous, but it is a classic, this movie, but I don't love Night of the Living Dead. Like, it's not a film that I absolutely love and that I'll throw on every now and then. I don't remember the last time I saw Night of the Living Dead. So this is going to be an interesting rewatch. I was debating whether to watch the colorized version or just the original black and white, because I've seen the colorized one a few times maybe over the years, and it does give a different feel to it, a different mood, atmosphere to it. But I said let's just go with the black and white original and let's dive into it. Let's watch and talk about George A. Romero's directorial debut, Night of the Living Dead. Now this movie too, I think at the time it was one of the most profitable independent films, because I'm pretty sure the budget for this was like 100,000, 125,000 maybe, the most, and it made back like 30 million. So right there, you know you did something right when your movie that you put 100 grand, a little over into, and you made back $30 million internationally. That is a feat all on its own right there. And it blows my mind, like how cheap he made this movie and just how huge of a cultural impact this movie had on society, on the horror genre, on film in general. Just, it is such an influential movie. Even if I don't regard it as like a masterpiece, I respect the hell out of it for what it did for horror. So, a lot of interesting first time stuff we see here in this movie. This movie was also known for having a black protagonist, main character, which you just didn't see back in 1968 when this came out. And we all know what happens to him at the end. And we've seen that used numerous times after this movie. The first thing that comes to mind for me is Cabin Fever, Eli Roth, when the one guy survives and he didn't get the disease, the flesh-eating virus, and then the people just show up and he's celebrating way too soon, and then he just gets mowed down with bullets and shot and then burned. Obviously an homage to this movie, but I could imagine how shocking that must have been for people in theaters watching this back in the late 60s. Like having a black protagonist here, and then him just being shot and killed at the end of this, like for no reason whatsoever, just because they thought that he was a ghoul. And that's another thing. I like how Romero always referred to them as ghouls. So I don't remember, I'll see as we watch here, but I don't remember if they ever used the term zombie in this movie. I was thinking the same thing in Lucio Fulci's Zombie, and they do use the term two, three times or so in that movie. This, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure they don't use the term zombie because Romero was pretty adamant that they're called ghouls. So let's see if they actually use the term zombie in this. Now I do remember reading that they pretty much didn't make anything from this movie, like something to do with the contracts or something, the rights to it. Like they didn't make anywhere near that 30 million that the movie made. They saw very little of it, and that's why they. That's not the the only reason, but I think that was a big reason of why Romero wanted to do the remake in 1990 that Savini directed, and Romero wrote that one. So I think that was their way to try to make some money back off this property of Night of the Living Dead because they didn't see anywhere near that $30 million that this movie grossed, which is a shame with just how influential this movie was and what a cult classic it became. And they basically got screwed working on this movie and just did not get what they deserved and what they should have had coming to them. Now, I'm going to blanket this like I usually do with certain movies or directors. I will say I'm not as familiar with Romero's directing style. I mean, like, I've seen all his movies. So, I can tell it's Romero just by the zombies and stuff for the most part. But, like, he's done some other movies that didn't have anything to do with that. Like, Monkey Shines and, what was the other? The Crazies and another type of zombie type thing. I can't think of the other movie. But he did Martin, I think, right? That Monkey Shine. So he has a distinct directing style, but it's not like for me like if I look at Carpenter or if I look at Argento or Bava, Fulci, like Craven, that I can instantly look at it and know like the techniques that they're known for and camera angles and work that they use. I'm not as versed with Romero like that. So I'm just going to blanket it by saying the directing is amazing in this movie, because it is. Same with Dawn, same with Day, and I don't remember really the later trilogy, but I will be doing those also. So this is going to be a fun two trilogy of zombie movies that were just amazingly influential on horror and the zombie genre. So we have, I think Johnny's his name, Johnny and Barbara, are siblings that come to pay respect to, I think it's her father, Barbara's father, and we get that iconic line that everyone knows what it's from. Listen, they're coming to get you, Barbara. And she's getting scared, and he's like purposely trying to scare her with that. I love that line, and everybody knows where that's from. Like, they're coming to get you, Barbara. Just the way he says it, like, just awesome delivery on that line. Just that first shot, too, that we get of the first zombie who's in the suit, and he's walking through the cemetery. And I keep wanting to say Johnny. I'm pretty sure his name is Johnny. If I'm wrong, so be it. But he looks over and he notices him, and then he looks back at Barbara and kind of forgets about him for a little bit until he starts getting closer. But the initial shots of that zombie, that first one that we see, are just great shots. And it's very ominous. It's very dark feeling. Like, you can feel like an evil presence just looking at those shots of that zombie before you even know what's going to happen in this. So great job with the introduction of the first one. They're coming for you, Barbara. Stop it. You're ignorant. Like, Barbara is a little annoying in this movie. I do remember that. But I love their little sibling relationship here and how he's constantly fucking with her and trying to scare the shit out of her. And then they just start seeing more of these zombies. Ghoul. This whole setting, too, of the graveyard, and then the thunder starts, and I lost my train of thought. But the thunder and everything with the whole setting of the graveyard here looks awesome. Like, it has such a great atmosphere to it. This whole opening with the graveyard scene. It looks so good. It feels very creepy, and he sets a great mood here. Like, It's, I just, it's hard to go back and look at this movie after we've been beaten over the head over and over again since these movies with the zombie genre. Like, look how many zombie films there are. Like, it's insane how that subgenre of horror and that creature of the zombie just took off and just became like one of the most oversaturated subgenres in horror, the zombie film. But looking at how far we came from, we look at the zombies in here, they look like almost normal people. Like, there's hardly any real makeup on them. Like, they just look like people that like were dead and came back to life. There's no crazy makeup on them that looks like they're decaying or anything like that we see in later movies. Like, we especially in like Day of the Dead. Dawn, that's one of my nitpicks with Dawn, is how the zombies look with like the bluish faces. I don't know what they were thinking with that. Like, it's unique. Like, you can tell right away it's Dawn of the Dead from how the zombies look. But just how far we've come, man. Like, looking at The Walking Dead and seeing all the amazing effects on them and the zombies in that, and just like how some are just withered away and they're just skeletons almost with a little bit of skin on them, or just half zombies crawling around. Like, that coming from this, just what an evolution of a subgenre. And then just her running for her life after John, it is Johnny too, they said his name, and just running from this ghoul that she has no idea what's going on. Johnny was fighting with him and he fell and hit his head on a gravestone. I forget if he dies. I don't remember. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen this. But then the whole setting of the farmhouse too in this is awesome. Like, it's a great set for these characters to be basically stuck in and have to barricade themselves inside this place to stop being attacked by the Walking Dead here. Like, these reanimated corpses. All the setting of the graveyard and the farmhouse just look fantastic in this movie. And I love both sets immensely. Another thing I'll say is the score. The score is very good in this movie. It's very effective. It fits the whole mood and atmosphere of the dead coming back to life and trapping them basically in this farmhouse. And they have to figure out a way to survive. And when you really think about it, like, being stuck in a location like this with something going on outside that you have no idea what to make of it, that these corpses, these dead people, are coming back to life and eating the brains, like eating people. I couldn't imagine being in that situation. Because when you look at this movie, this is something that the characters in this universe of the movie have never seen before. They've never experienced anything like this. I don't think they've even thought of a scenario like this. So when they start realizing what exactly is happening here, it's very effective, because you can tell that they're just flabbergasted. Like, they don't know what to think about what's going on. And they really don't get that much information on what exactly they're dealing with. They have to pretty much put it together themselves and realize that the dead are walking the earth. And that I think it's from like a news broadcast or something like that, that reveals saying that you have to shoot them in the head to put them down for good. But they get very little exposition, like we get as an audience, very little exposition in this movie. It's not really explained. I think, if I remember correctly, the reason for the zombies or the ghouls coming back to life is something to do with like something was passing through like Venus and something, and like it affected Earth in some way. Like, there's like a space explanation or something for why the dead are coming back to life here. I'll find out as we keep going, obviously. But if my memory serves me, it's something like that. It's some type of space, like, phenomenon or something that triggers this whole rising from the dead thing and creating these ghouls. And I love the shots, and I mean, you can't really call this a jump scare, but when Barbara's walking around the farmhouse and she's looking outside and she sees the zombie, and then she's so, I can't say whatever. It's zombie, ghoul, it doesn't fucking matter. It's one of those. I'm just gonna keep interchanging them. But when she's walking around and then it just pans on like the boar's head on the wall, and then like the deer head, and the music swells up, kind of like a jump scare would be nowadays, like with the loud music and stuff, but it's not really a jump scare. But they're cool shots, the way that he shoots those animal heads and how it freaks her out. Why? I don't know. I mean, she should be more freaked out at the Walking Dead person that just killed her brother instead of just being scared of the animal heads that are on the wall in this place. But I love those shots with the animal heads and the score that kicks in. It's very, very good. The shot that we get of like the skeleton, pretty much, when Barbara goes up the stairs and then it just pans in on that like skeleton ghoul almost, or maybe it's somebody's like it was an actual person and they were eaten until their like skeleton was showing. I'm not sure, but it's such a cool shot, the way he just pans in on the skeletal face, and Barbara just freaks the hell out. Then she meets she meets Dwayne here. I'm pretty sure that's his name, or is that the actor's name? I don't know. The main black protagonist here. Pretty sure it's Dwayne, I want to say, but then she runs into him, and then they try to start figuring out what's going on here. I also like how the zombies in this movie actually use tools. Like we see before she gets into the farmhouse, we see one of the zombies pick up some type of tool and try breaking the window of the car. And then we see later on in that great scene when the zombie little girl goes and kills her mom with like the gardening trough or whatever the hell that is. I like how they use tools in this. Like, it's something you don't see, like, moving forward here from this movie on in the zombie subgenre. We've seen it, yeah. It's, like, I can think of some movies that have the same type of zombies that use items and tools and weapons, but you never saw that before this movie. And I love that little addition. Also, now that I'm starting to remember this more, since the last time I saw it, Romero does use a lot of cool camera tricks in this. Like a lot of quick pans on certain scary images, and the way it pans in on the blood that's dripping down on like near on the wall. He uses a lot of cool camera work in this, and you see that same type of camera work in Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. Like I said, I don't remember Land and Diary and Survival of the Dead that much, so those will be interesting rewatches for sure. But he does have a distinct style of directing. Like I said, I'm just not as familiar with picking out certain techniques he uses versus other favorite directors of mine. But awesome camera work throughout this movie. So then I'm just going to keep calling him Dwayne until they say his name. He goes outside and says there's 2 zombies out there and that he can take them. So he goes out and puts them down with a tire iron. And then we have that cool shot that Barbara's sitting on the chair and we see another ghoul coming towards her and she doesn't notice it. And then once Dwayne gets back in the house, he notices it. And then he starts fighting with this ghoul and ends up killing him. Really, really cool. And it's a female zombie. This one, I'm pretty sure. It looks like a woman, but who knows with the makeup. And like I said, there isn't much makeup on these. Like you see one with like a little bit of blood coming down its mouth, or you'll see like a scar on the side of their face. That's it. Like I said, they look just like normal people that rose out of the grave. And I think that's a very good way of making them still feel like people, that these are still human beings. They've just came back to life for some reason. Like as we see going on, like in Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, they look more like zombies and less, it makes you look at them less like human beings. and or what used to be human beings versus this movie, because it really nails it when it comes to making them look like actual human beings who just came back from the dead. Like, they don't look over the top. They don't look have all this crazy deformed faces and makeup on them. They look like regular people. And I think that's one thing that was very effective and worked very well for the audience that were seeing this movie for the first time in 1968. I would love to see this movie time travel back to 1968 and see this in the theaters. I say the same thing about The Exorcist, The Thing, Halloween. I'd love to see all those movies in their respective years that they came out in the theater, just to see the audience reaction. And this is one of those movies that I would love to see the reaction from the audience to this movie. And now there's like 6 or 7 zombies outside, and Dwayne makes the comment that they know that the zombies know that they're in this farmhouse now, and they're going to try to get themselves in no matter what they have to do, because they be hungry. And the sound design is great in this too. Like, just there's a lot of silence when the score is not happening, when we don't hear the score. Like, just the sound of the crickets and stuff, like outside when he's moving the zombie's body outside and lights it on fire, and the 5, 6 zombies are outside working their way trying to get to the house. Just the sound design is great. Just the crickets chirping and the sounds of the zombies walking. It's so creepy. It's so well done. It's so effective, and it makes the atmosphere of this movie even more scary and creepy and terrifying than it would be without that awesome sound design. And I love how calm, and I'm going to be so mad if his name isn't Dwayne and I'm calling him Dwayne this entire video, but I love how calm he is throughout this, and how rational and logical he's thinking, and just saying, all right, we have to board the house up, and tells Barb to go get wood from the fireplace so he can board the windows and doors up. Like, he doesn't panic. He basically just keeps his cool, and he's thinking logically about this and saying, all right, we're trapped inside here. We have to make sure they don't get in. And the first thing that I would do too is board up the windows and doors. So there's not a lot of stupid decisions made by the main characters in this movie. And I really appreciate that, because we see in so many zombie movies just the stupidest decisions, like many, many horror movies, that these characters make in a lot of zombie movies. But in this one here, he's pretty smart about it. Not many stupid, dumb decisions that I can call out here. And I'm going to say good call here by me of watching the original here and not the colorized version, because this is a movie that really is more effective in black and white. Like, it was filmed in black and white, and I think that's how it should be seen. Like, it's cool to see the color version just to see it and see this in color, but it's one of those movies like Psycho. Like, if Psycho was not in black and white, I feel like it would lose something. Like, nothing major, but I feel like it would lose a little bit of the atmosphere and mood that Psycho has. Same thing here. Like, I feel like the black and white adds so much to this movie. And just seeing it in color, while it is cool to see it once or twice, this is the way to watch this movie. Like, in the original version in black and white. And I don't really even have to be muting this because it's public domain, but just to be on the safe side, because I did get a copyright strike recently, and it goes away in March, I want to say. So I don't want to get hit with another one because of some bullshit like one piece of the score is still copyrighted and stuff. That happened to Al and Pat and I when we were watching what was it, the giant Gila monster we had on the Midnight Society. We went to watch that. We got 40 minutes in, and then Al got a copyright notice from YouTube because the music in the movie, even though the movie was public domain, the music wasn't. So he got a copyright thing for that. So that's why I'm keeping it muted, even though I feel like I really don't have to. I just don't want to chance it. That's my zombie impression. We also find out that they're afraid of fire. which is another cool addition here. So I like the whole fact that they use weapons and use tools, and that he finds out that they're afraid of fire. And like I said, I'm going to be really upset if his name is not Dwayne. Like, I don't know why I'm thinking Dwayne. I'm pretty sure it's his character's name. If not, it's the actor's name. So apologies if his name isn't Dwayne in this. But I don't know, for some reason, that name is just drilled into my head here. So I'm pretty sure that's his name. Now, a question that I've always had here, where did he come from? Dwayne. Or Dwayne. We're just going to call him Dwayne. Where did he come from? Like, Barb, we know, is there because she was visiting, her relative's grave, and she was in the cemetery. He doesn't live here, right, Dwayne? So where did he come from? Was he just like being chased by these ghouls and just ended up seeing this house and said, all right, cool, I can go in here and get some shelter and protection? I'm guessing it's just that, because he kind of just appears out of nowhere. So I wonder where he was and where he was heading from or coming from until he found this farmhouse. All right, so I just backed out of Tubi to see the information, and the actor's name is Dwayne. So that's why I'm thinking Dwayne. Forget his name in this. I don't think they mention it, but when they do, I'll get that name to you. Don't you worry. But Dwayne Jones is the actor's name, and he gives a great performance in this. So does Barb. Like, all the characters in this movie, which is not many, they all give very strong performances in this. Like, they feel like real characters. They feel like real people that are going through this ordeal, and that they have no idea what to expect. And then we get this whole story from Dwayne, which I guess answers my question of where he was. And he was saying he was at a diner, and then he was hearing screams inside, and then everything went silent, and then he said that he was being chased basically by 50 or 60 of these ghouls. So just hearing those numbers alone right there makes you wonder how many ghouls there are, and like when this started with the whole space explanation that we didn't get yet, but I mentioned earlier. I wonder how many dead corpses were reanimated and came back to life. Like 50, 60 sounds like a lot. It's not. Like, as we see as this trilogy goes on, in Dawn of the Dead, we got a whole bunch more zombies. And then Day of the Dead, we have a lot of zombies too, but since it takes place in that bunker, like underground, I feel like there's less of them until like the end. But just that number of 50 or 60 that he was being chased by in that one area by the diner really makes you think of how widespread this is. Is it only taking place in this area where the farmhouse is, like in this town? Is it taking place all over the country? Is it taking place all over the world? I don't think we find out any of that, but it adds to the mystery, and it makes it that much more terrifying of not knowing how many of these ghouls are out there and how much firepower you would need, or how long you would have to be battling these things and trying to protect yourself. Very, very well done with the mystique here and just the mystery and not having all of this explained, which you guys know I love that in movies, when it's open to interpretation or it makes you think and it doesn't give you all the answers. I love that about this. And actually, I take back what I said earlier. Unless it happens like further into the movie, I think I was thinking of the remake, like Barbara in the remake, being very annoying, because she's not that annoying here in this movie. I think I'm thinking of the Savini remake from 1990, but I'll see as this progresses if her character does get annoying, which I was thinking that she does. But now that I'm seeing this and seeing her character, I'm pretty sure I'm thinking of the Barbara that we see depicted in the remake, not in this one. Alright, she is a little annoying, but I'm still pretty sure she's much more annoying, the character of Barbara in the remake, and that's what I'm thinking of. But she's recounting the whole story at the beginning and repeats the great line of Johnny saying, he's coming to get you, Barbara, and the way she mocks him, kind of, the way that he says it, I love that. And then just her like breaking down and saying that the man, meaning the ghoul, came up and attacked her and grabbed her and was clawing at her clothing and everything. And Dwayne is just saying, you need to calm down. Like, and she's just past the point of calm down. Like, she's just getting into hysterics here. And I like how he starts calming her down. Like, he's so cool, calm, and relaxed during this whole situation in this scenario that it's like, has he done this before? Like, has he experienced a zombie takeover before? And like he's dealt with this, and that's why he's so calm about everything. Like, that's almost how it feels, the way that he portrays the character here, with just being very logical, thinking things through, not panicking. But then, like I said, it makes me wonder, like, have you done this before? Like, has this happened to you? And then Barbara just passes out on the couch because she's screaming, we gotta go get Johnny. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Johnny's dead. Like, he hit his head on that tombstone pretty hard, but if that didn't kill him, then I'm sure one of the ghouls got to him by now. So Johnny's dead. And this is on Tubi, so if you want to go back to school, you should go. It's SNHU. It's Southern something something University. Tubi told me, I'm telling you. So if you want to go back to school, go to SNHU. And then now we get the whole little news position, the exposition via news on the radio of kind of what's going on here, what they know and what they don't know, and then we hear some of the tips here on how to put these ghouls down and to rest again. So we get information from the news here saying that the way that they refer to it is that there's mass murders taking place. And he mentions that it's happening in towns, it's happening in cities, it's happening in rural areas, it's happening in the suburbs. So that answers my question earlier of like, how widespread is this? And he says that there's no apparent pattern for the reason of these murders that are taking place all over the place. And I like how the news guy refers to them, the ghouls, as assassins that are committing these murders, and that eyewitnesses are saying that they look like ordinary people, which is what I was saying earlier, that they don't look deformed or like decayed or anything like that. They look like ordinary people, and they seem to appear to be in some type of trance, is how they describe it, like the eyewitnesses who have seen these ghouls walking around their area. Now, I don't think they say where this takes place, but I know Romero filmed most of his movies in Pittsburgh because he's from there. So, or if he's not from Pittsburgh and I'm wrong about that, he's somewhere in Pennsylvania. But I know that he shoots a lot of his movies. He used to shoot in Pittsburgh and surrounding areas in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to go with that this is in Pennsylvania, even if they don't mention it, because it even looks like Pennsylvania, like the outside shots when we get at the beginning with the cemetery and stuff, just like the background scenery and stuff. It seems like it definitely could be in like a rural area of Pennsylvania. So I'm going to go with that unless they mention where this takes place. I like how Dwayne makes the little makeshift torch and then brings the couch, like the sofa, outside onto the porch where like the 4 or 5 zombies are outside heading towards the house, and he lights it on fire, and we know that they're afraid of fire. So just a way to keep them at bay even just a little bit longer, to buy themselves a little more time. Yeah, so they mentioned on the radio that there's going to be like some presidential meeting, and that there's going to be high-ranking scientists that are like specialize in, I forgot what they say. Hold on, now I gotta see it because I'm gonna forget the word. They're saying that the FBI and Joint Chiefs behind the closed doors, that the White House spokesperson says that there will be an official announcement as soon as following that presidential meeting. And they just received news in the newsroom that press services in Washington, D.C. tell us that the emergency presidential conference that they just mentioned is going to have national, that's it, aeronautics and space administration. So this is where we hear the first bit of information about the whole explanation for why this is happening. That is something to do with outer space, which I know in Dawn and Day, it has nothing to do with that. So this is just contained for this story in this movie in Night of the Living Dead. That there's some type of spacey explanation or a space phenomenon or something that is responsible for the ghouls coming back to life and becoming these zombies and attacking people. And then news keeps on going with the exposition here. And this is the type of movie that I don't mind there being so much exposition, like through the news, through the radio and stuff. Because, oh, what's the movie? Is it Pontypool? Where it takes place all in like a radio station, and there's being words, like there's a virus being spread by like using certain words. I'm pretty sure it's Pontypool, but it reminds me of that a little bit, or I should say Pontypool reminds me of this a little bit. Like, I don't like a lot of exposition in movies, but here it works, because this is what you would get all this information from if this actually happened. You know, the news on the radio and the TV are going to be reporting on all these crazy murders, and again, they really hammer home that they look like ordinary people. Then they have eyewitnesses saying that they look like people, but they act like animals, and that some of the victims look like they've been torn apart. So, like, all the exposition here works for me 100%. Where in 99% of movies, I would be not complaining, but I would be saying, like, there's way too much exposition here. But for this movie and the way that it's handled and the way that it's given to us through the news, it works for me 100%. They also mentioned that this is nationwide. That there's reports coming in of these people coming back to life, or they're not even saying that at this point, but these murderers, these mass killers, are being reported all throughout the nation. So this is at least nationwide, if not worldwide. But so far we know that it's taking place all over the nation of the United States. And then Dwayne finds a nice shotgun and bullets. So they are pretty prepared. Now we start getting more news saying that these mass killers, the ghouls, which they haven't referred to them as that yet, but they say that finally that the victims are being devoured and being eaten by these creatures. So we start getting, that's another reason why the exposition, that's my rewind. The exposition doesn't bother me in this movie, because it slowly gives us more and more information, and not even just us, it gives it to the characters here, more and more information that they can use to try to defend themselves. So it's very well done, the way that the radio broadcast here is feeding information to our characters and to us as the audience. And yeah, they just mentioned Pennsylvania, so this is taking place somewhere in Pennsylvania. Then we get the two other male characters that show up and scare the living hell out of Barbara. And then they're saying that they were in the cellar, and Dwayne, I'm now it's killing me what his real name is, his character's name. But Dwayne says to them that, like, you didn't hear any of the noise up here, like the racket of me like boarding up the windows and Barbara screaming, and they're saying that they can't really hear well down there, but then they're saying that it could have been, you know, these ghouls in the house trying to attack Barbara, and that's why she was screaming, and that's why they didn't come up and help. Like, I like the whole way that the group here of four starts to, argue with each other, and it starts turning on each other a little bit. And Dwayne starts saying, like, you wouldn't come up and help if you were hearing this girl screaming, even if it was those things attacking her. I love that whole little scene of dialogue and exchange between them. The cellar is the safest place, I'm telling you. Mr. Cooper is very adamant about the cellar being the best place. He does have a point, though, saying that upstairs here they have all these windows that these ghouls can, break through, and that they have to protect all these different windows and entrances. Down in the cellar, there's just one way in, one way out. So they only would have to protect one door. So he has a point, but he just comes across as a complete asshole. And we get a nice little scare here when Dwayne, it's killing me, man, and the younger guy are walking past, and there's like two ghouls. It looks like two of them, if not there's one, but the hands reach out and grab them. It's so cool how they do that. We get some great shots too after that, like literal shots and camera work. When after the ghoul reaches through the window, the boards, and he grabs at them and scares them, he starts Dwayne starts shooting at him and shoots him in the chest and shoots him a second time and says damn thing. Then he ends up shooting him in the head, and that's what puts him down. Great camera work through that, and this is kind of how they figure out you got to hit him in the brain. And then we'll hear that on the news in a little bit. If you're looking to lose weight, you need Jenny Craig. Use that diet. Get rid of that fat, baby. Oh. Oh, oh. Say what? Now we see some of the ghouls here that have a little bit more makeup on them. Their face looks a little more fucked up and dead. And we see the female ghoul take it looks like a centipede or something off the tree and starts eating it. So I guess these zombies don't just have to eat flesh, they can eat bugs. I guess, because we just saw one eat a centipede. So I don't know how much that fills them up. I'm guessing not much, because they're still coming after these people. And they have a bottomless stomach. They can just keep eating and eating and eating. So cool how we get that little centipede scene, though, because it begs the question of, do they just eat flesh from human beings? Because apparently not. And again, I love the banter between Cooper and Dwayne here when they're arguing. And then he basically says to the younger one, he said, are you going down in the cellar too? Because this is the last chance. No beating around the bush. And then Cooper mentions that he has his daughter downstairs. Excuse me. And that she's hurt. And that she wouldn't be able to be up here on the upstairs. She's better off in the cellar. And then I love the line that Dwayne says to him and says that, oh, it must be a shame that, for the girl that her father's so stupid. But you could be the boss down in the cellar. I love that line from him. And Cooper hits him with a "you bastards." Bastard! Bastard! What's that from? I know some of you will get it. And then we meet Judy, who, I forget, is that Cooper's wife or something? But she comes up from the cellar, and Cooper goes down into the cellar. And then we have the young guy talking through the door, trying to get him to come out and saying that we should all work together, the three of us, meaning him, Cooper, and Dwayne. And yeah, I gave up on the name. He's just Dwayne. And I love the whole bickering between them here, because it adds a lot of tension to an already tense and terrifying situation that they're in. So and we see this a lot in movies, and horror movies especially, decades after this movie, of just people having inner turmoil and fighting with each other while they're in a much more stressful situation. But it works very well here. It's very effective, and it adds a lot more tension to an already tense situation. Yeah, so Tom is the name of the younger guy. We're getting all these names, but not fucking Dwayne's actual character's name. I'm sure they said it at the very beginning, and I just missed it. But they never call him by his name again. But Tom is married to Judy. Then Cooper's down in the basement, and I'm assuming that's his wife. And then his daughter that's laying down on the table, and she's not feeling well. And she's going to become a ghoul in a little bit, in a awesome scene, and a very disturbing scene for people who saw this movie for the first time. I love how Cooper's wife, Helen, is getting pissed at him too and saying they have a radio upstairs and you boarded us up down here, and just their whole little bickering back and forth. And then Tom screams down saying that they found a TV up here, and Helen again, she's like, let's go up there. Like, they have the radio, they got TV. Like, why are we down here? Ben! Ben! That's Dwayne's name. Ben. Okay. Because when he screamed down Tom and said about the TV, he said Ben found a television set up here. So, Ben. There we go. That's Dwayne's name. So, I remembered the actor's name. So, I'll take half credit. Couldn't remember the character's name of Ben. But we got it now. It is Ben. That is B-E-N. Ben. I don't know if I spelled that the right way because it's mirror image looking at myself. Who gives a shit? And Cooper's saying this whole thing, going crazy, saying that he boarded up the cellar. But then when they go to switch places with, what the hell is the Tom's wife, and he says, can you go down there with the girl and stuff? Like, please do it for a favor for me. And then Cooper opens the door. There's just one piece of wood. That's it. Like, he didn't board this cellar up. There's one, like, 2x4 that's, like, boarded against the door. And all he does is lift it up and the door opens right away. So he didn't board up shit. He made it sound like it's a fortress down there. There's one piece of wood. These ghouls can absolutely break through that. So, yeah, the whole cellar idea, not a good idea, Cooper. And I just can't say enough about the sound design. Like, I have my sound bar here blasting when I watch movies. It feels like there's crickets in my room. Like, it really does. Like, it's just coming out on both sides, and it just, like, right over here, it sounds like there's just a orgy of crickets. Like a plethora of crickets just chirping away in my room. Like, they did a great job with the sound design and mixing the sound and everything like that. It sounds great. And everyone smoked cigarettes in this movie. It's like it was funded by Philip Morris. Like, every single person in this movie, except for the daughter, obviously, the little kid, they all are smoking cigarettes throughout this whole movie. And you know, for all the news that we're hearing about how widespread this is and how dangerous these ghouls are and everything, we're 54 minutes into this movie with like a half hour left, 35 minutes left. They're doing pretty good just hanging out in this house. Like, there hasn't been a zombie trying to get in like 50 minutes or so, except for the one that was reaching through the boards in the window, and he shot him a few times and shot him in the head. Besides that, like, this whole time, they're not really trying that hard to get into this house. Like, at all. Like, you'd think that they'd be really hungry, and they'd be doing anything to get into this house. You don't hear noise, you don't hear them, like, scratching against the house, or, like, anything like that. It seems like they're just having a tea party outside, like, and just, all right, we'll just wait this out and see when they come out like idiots, and then we'll do our thing. Like, I don't know, they seem very, very safe in this house for the majority of this movie. Old TVs from the 1960s. Gotta love them. I like how how he shot the TV, though. Like, just that static camera shot on the TV. I don't know, something about it. Like, it looks really cool. Like, I like that whole scene of just filming the television set and hearing the news reporter on it. And this is finally when we hear from the reporter here of what actually is going on. And we hear for the first time that the recently dead, and reports from the morgues and hospitals, cemeteries, funeral homes, that the dead are coming back to life and are feasting on human victims. So this is where we hear for the first time in the movie them describing exactly what's happening here. Then we hear more about the space angle here on the news, and the reporter is saying is, after the presidential meeting and stuff that they had, why are space experts being brought in here to deal with a, on Earth, I don't even know what to say, like, situation, or problem here that they're having on the planet, on Earth. Why are space experts being brought in? So we start hearing more about the whole space angle and explanation for why the dead are coming back to life here. And then we get the whole theory here of what's going on, and that there was a satellite that was sent to Venus from Earth. Then, as it was coming back, NASA destroyed the satellite because they thought that there was high traces of radiation, and so they destroyed it. But they're thinking that the radiation here is what's causing this whole situation of having the dead come back to life. So, as I said, this is only the explanation for this movie's universe and the situation with the zombies in this movie. Because in Dawn and Day, we don't hear about this ever again. So this is just for Night of the Living Dead here. But, I mean, I don't know how I feel about the whole explanation here, that it's something with radiation from space and Venus and stuff. It's a little out there, but I mean, it's nothing that really takes me out of the movie or anything. But when I hear that explanation, I kind of go, all right, whatever. Like, it's a classic zombie movie. It's kick-started basically the whole zombie subgenre. Whatever. Let them have whatever explanation they want at this point. And then, you gotta love the 60s. Cooper's, now they're saying that staying indoors is not a good idea, and that they should get in the truck, try to fill it up with gas, that there was a gas pump right here outside of the house, and just try to book it out of here. And Cooper says, like, how are we going to get out of here? We have a sick girl, we have 2 women, like, like, that's his reason there, is we got a sick girl, we have 2 women, and, like, one who's, like, out of her mind, like Barbara. Just, you gotta love the 60s. Now, the medical professional or the scientist, whoever he is, on the news with the reporter is saying that the best way to handle this situation is that it only takes a few minutes for the dead to come back to life, to be reactivated, and that the best way to handle them is cremation. Like, we know that they're afraid of fire. So he says that the best thing to do is the bodies must be carried out into the streets and set ablaze and burnt to a crisp, basically. And then again, great idea from Ben here. It feels so good having his real name, his character's name. Of, you know, do they have a fruit cellar? And that we need, bottles and stuff to make Molotov cocktails. Great idea. Like, I love how there's not a lot of stupid decisions in here, like I was saying earlier. Boo. So now the TV was saying that they have rescue stations in like every county and stuff, or every town, for them to go to when they have food, supplies, shelter, and they're guarded by National Guards. So that's where they want to get to. They're going to take this truck. They found the key that is for the gas pump, and they're going to make these Molotov cocktails, I guess, to kill these ghouls that are hanging out around the house, so that they can get to the gas pump, get in that truck, and zoom off to whatever safe haven that they have here in this town. So now Ben and Tom are taking the boards off the front door, and Cooper is... It's Cooper, right? Yeah, Cooper's upstairs. Harry's his first name. Is throwing the Molotov cocktails out the window, and immediately the ghouls just start backing off. They're terrified of the fire, and Ben has the torch in his hand, the handmade torch. He made another one, and they're working their way into the truck, and they start getting attacked by the ghouls. He starts shooting at them. It's some good action here, and there's some great tension in these scenes. I love when they back the truck up and one of the ghouls hangs onto the bumper and gets dragged a little bit. That's a cool little touch. Another effective scene here is when Tom and his wife, Helen, I want to say, or Judy, and they're in the truck, and Ben tries to go to the gas pump, and stupidly he puts the torch down like 10 feet, not even, from the gas pump. And he shoots because the key's not working, so he shoots at it, and the gas is flying everywhere, and they go to try to put it in the truck, but it falls onto the torch and lights it ablaze, and then the truck catches on fire. So Tom gets into the truck with Judy and starts backing up, and then her jacket's caught when he's trying to say, "Let's get out of here. We got to get out of the truck," and then it just explodes, and it kills the both of them. And Ben is just looking at this in horror, and Cooper the same thing from the window, like, holy shit, like. It's a cool scene. Like, it's sad to see these characters die like that, but at least they didn't get eaten by ghouls. That's a positive, right? And at this point, there's like 20, 25 ghouls that are walking around, and some of them, I mean, these are all supposed to be people who were buried and are dead that came back to life, right? So, like, how come one of them has no shirt on? Like, was he buried like that? Like, they don't bury people with no clothes on. Like, he has pants, but he has no shirt. And I find it hard to believe that a zombie, a ghoul here, would have the thought to take his shirt off. So I don't know why that guy's missing a shirt, that ghoul, but he is. And I noticed it, and it's a little distracting and stupid. But it is what it is. Then I love how after that, the truck scene and then seeing all that stuff happen, they immediately, Cooper and Ben, run back into the house and start boarding up the door again. That's awesome, because, I mean, there's no truck no more. So, I mean, what are they going to do? They have to barricade themselves back in there. And then they start getting into a fight, and Ben fucking punches him in the face and starts just a brawl between the two of them. Awesome. I love that whole scene, too. And then we get a great scene, and I was just thinking about this topic, so it's cool that it happened right here. When all the ghouls go to a truck and then they start taking the body parts and stuff from Tom and Judy that exploded in there, and they're eating the intestines and eating all the body parts of them and stuff. Looks really cool. Now, I was just thinking that the reason this is not my favorite compared to Dawn and Day, like, this is number 3 for me. Like I said at the beginning, it's a classic, and I do love this movie, but I don't love this movie. Like, I don't look at this as like, oh man, Night of the Living Dead, what an amazing film. I mean, it is an amazing film. It's so hard to describe this movie for me. And I think the main reason here is it's not the zombies and how they look. Like I said, I love the fact that they look like human beings here, and they hammer that home on the news and stuff a few times, saying that they look like ordinary people. I love that about this. But in a zombie movie, I want to see zombies eating people apart, ripping their flesh and all of that, which we get in Dawn of the Dead, and we get amazingly in Day of the Dead with Tom Savini's effects there, and K&B, Nicotero, and Kurtzman and Berger and stuff who worked with him on Dawn also. But amazing practical effects, especially in Day of the Dead, and that's partly why it's my favorite. But I feel like that's lacking in this movie. And of course, it's 1968, so you can't really look at it and compare it to Dawn, which came out 10 years later, and then compare it to Day, which came out in 85. So obviously, like, 80s movies and stuff were the biggest with the practical effects and all the gore and stuff like that. So it makes sense, like, the evolution of these 3 movies and the gore, how it gets upped with each installment. And it's effective here just how it is. I just like that, aspect of zombie movies, the gore and just cool zombie kills and seeing zombies being hacked up and shot apart, and just all like the practical effects work and stuff is lacking from this movie. And I think that's a major reason for why it ranks in 3rd place for me of this original trilogy. And Day of the Dead is my favorite. For me, I think Day of the Dead is Tom Savini's magnum opus when it comes to effects work. Like, of all the movies he's done, and there's so many, and there's so many classics of Friday the 13th, Dawn of the Dead, Maniac, The Burning, The Prowler. the list goes on and on. Friday the 13th Part 4, which is my favorite slasher film of all time. All the work that he did, I think, led up to Day of the Dead. And there's no movie that he's done effects on that rival that for me. Like Day of the Dead, the effects work in that movie, and I'll talk about this in Day of the Dead video. But I love the effects in that movie so much. Like it has some of my favorite practical effects in a movie. And you guys know how much The Thing is my favorite movie of all time, and how much I praise the practical effects work in that is the greatest of all time in a movie, in a horror movie especially. The Thing, like that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of practical effects. But Day of the Dead comes up too. Like that pops into my head every time I hear practical effects, and it's just so good in Day of the Dead. But like I said, we'll talk about that in Day of the Dead. But I think that's a major reason why Night of the Living Dead doesn't hit as high for me as the next two movies. Help, there's crickets all around me in my room again. And this is where we find out what happened to the daughter here, that she was attacked by one of the ghouls and got bit by one. So we know what that means. She's turning into a ghoul. Daughter zombie ghoul. If you want banking the way it should be, you're going to want to go with Chime from Discover. There's a tip for you. And Discover, they're not going to take it. No, they're not going to take it. They're not going to take it anymore. Twisted Sister, which Dee Snider actually grew up on Long Island, like 4 minutes from where I am in Long Island. Like I pass his block where he grew up all the time. It has nothing to do with the movie, but hey, fun fact for you. So now we finally hear the word ghouls from the newscaster here, saying that they're testing the radiation, and that the radiation levels from the satellite that blew up on the way back from Venus, that crazy explanation, that the radiation keeps going up, and that people are going to... I lost my train of thought, so whatever. Oh yeah, so they're saying that because the radiation is so high that no matter how somebody dies, they're going to come back as one of these ghouls, and he uses the term ghoul. Then we get the famous, dialogue from him saying that the best way to deal with them is a shot to the head, or, cracking their skull with a hard object or a weapon. So, kill the brain, it kills the ghoul. This guy's asking the chief of police or whatever, that you think you're going to be able to wrap this whole situation up in 24 hours? Is he serious with that question? Is that a serious question? Like, really? He asked if this is going to be resolved in 24 hours. When we have all these ghouls that are being reported nationwide, they're going to take care of this in a day? Get the hell out of here, man. And now, finally, we see the ghouls with 15 minutes left in the movie trying to get into the house. And some of them are using, like, tree branches and different like weapons and objects to try to break in. One uses a brick and tries breaking the window with it. So again, I love how the ghouls in this actually use weapons and like objects to try to kill people before they eat them, or to get into places that people are barricading themselves in. And then Ben shoots Cooper as the ghouls start trying to get his wife Helen. It's getting tense, man. And then we get just the peak of this movie. This is my favorite scene in this movie, and this is the scene that everyone remembers from this, when the mom goes downstairs and she finds the daughter turned into a ghoul, and she's eating Cooper, and then she gets up and she comes with I don't know what it is, like a trowel, like a garden trowel or something, and she just comes up and starts stabbing her mother to death. And it's so creepy, it's so terrifying, just seeing this young girl as a zombie killing her mother violently like this. Like, it's not violent by like today's standards or anything, or even 10 years after this, but for the people who saw this in theaters, man, in the late 60s, this had to be a real disturbing scene, like, for sure, and it's my favorite scene in the movie. See, one of the ghouls too has like black gloves on. Was he buried like that? But again, they did say that if you die in any way, kind of like in The Walking Dead, when I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but if you die, you become a zombie, no matter how you die. And they mentioned that here, so I guess maybe that explains the ghoul without a shirt, and this ghoul with black gloves on. But I don't know, it looks a little ridiculous. And then the daughter makes her way up there and she tries attacking Ben and tries to bite him, and he just takes her and shoves her down onto the floor. Hilarious. The ghouls are in the house. Oh, yeah, yeah. The ghouls are in the house. Oh, yeah, yeah. There's that shirtless ghoul again. And then the quick shot we see when Ben now is in the cellar, barricaded in the cellar. There's like 15, 20 ghouls in the house. And we see the quick shot of the mother with the trowel sticking into her chest. Looks great. Then Cooper starts reanimating and starts coming back as a ghoul. Looks awesome. Like, there are good effects in here. Just nowhere near dawn and day. And it takes away, like I was saying, it takes away from the film a bit for me. And then I absolutely love the outdoor shots. Like when it's morning now, and then you see the helicopter flying. Just all the outdoor shots look so good. Like really great camera work, really good cinematography, which I know Romero did too. He did a lot on this movie. He directed, he co-wrote the script, he edited this, he did the cinematography. He might have done more, I'm not sure, but I know he did all that. For a directorial debut and him doing all that, it reminds me of David Lynch with Eraserhead. And you guys know how much I love David Lynch. On Eraserhead, he did the same thing. He did the writing, the directing, the editing, the sound design, the cinematography, all of that. For a directorial debut, that's absolutely amazing. Like, absolutely unreal that Romero here was able to do all that, and David Lynch was able to do all that in Eraserhead. So reinforcements are here, and they have dogs that they're using, and they say that there's a house over there, which is the house that they've been barricaded in. And they start heading over there with guns in hand and their dogs. And then we get the famous ending, man, and oh, it's a gut punch. It really is a gut punch when you see this for the first time, but then every time after this, where that you just have one of the guys say to the guy with the gun, he's like, yep, just shoot him, just right between the eyes. And then you just see Ben get shot right in the head and fall over. Oh, to go through all that and be such a good person and trying to keep all these people safe. And then he just gets killed. Shot in the head. Mistaken for a ghoul. And then we just get the credits and stuff. And God, man, what a great movie. Like, I actually grew a little more appreciation for it now on this rewatch. Maybe, like, with a decent amount of movies that I've covered since I started the channel, is that I'm looking at these movies with a much more analytical eye than I usually do when I would just watch these movies. And I definitely grew some more appreciation for this movie. It's still nowhere near Dawn and especially Day of the Dead for me, but we're going to dive into Dawn of the Dead right now. So let's get ready for 1978? Pretty sure. 1978's Dawn of the Dead by George A. Romero, again, with his second in this amazing trilogy of zombie movies. Night of the Living Dead, absolute classic. It's a cult classic. It left such a huge mark on film in general, but especially in the horror genre. Just like we just lost Ruggero Deodato, who directed Cannibal Holocaust and Body Count and a few other good movies that he did. We lost him, man, a few days ago on the 29th. And just like Romero with this movie, the mark that it left, Cannibal Holocaust, say what you will about the movie. I know a lot of people won't even watch it just because of the animal deaths that occur on screen. But say what you will about that movie. Cannibal Holocaust left an atomic bomb of a mark on film and the horror genre. Like, you can't deny that. and what this movie did for the zombie genre and just reinventing the zombie as it was known up until that point. Just amazing work all around. So that's Night of the Living Dead, guys, 1968. And I'm going to throw on Dawn of the Dead right now. So wherever you guys are from, hoping you're having a good morning or a good night. And I will see you guys in a bit in the mall with Dawn of the Dead. Take care, guys.